You're listening to Whiskey Tango Foxtrot with your host, Matty Conrad.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another edition of Whiskey Tango Foxtrot. We're in season 2, and today we are going to jump the pond through the wonders of technology here. We're going to jump over the pond and talk to one of my dearest friends in the industry and somebody who I felt an innate and instant kinship with. Mr. Joth Davies is the owner of Savills Barbers, and he was one of the few barbershops at the time when I decided to open Victory Barber and Brand that was up and functioning and doing something that I was deeply inspired by. Now, Joth and I have had a lot of similarities throughout our own career paths, and we've even come and kind of crossed over a few times when we've not just met in person, but also worked alongside each other, and we've been able to travel the world together. And he's a fascinating guy, and he has a lot to offer the world of barbering. So I'd like to introduce you to my very good friend, Mr. Joth Davies. Joth, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me, Matty. Yes, I mean, I know we plan to do this. Sorry, this is going to happen quite a lot. He's probably going to come into shot in a minute. We've got like animals galore in the house, dogs, cats, tortoises, and the cats just love to walk in right in the middle of you when you're reading something, and he's sat right there, and I know he's going to walk in shot in a minute. So, yeah, we are. That. I think we were planning on doing this obviously a while ago. Obviously, when you came to the UK, but we just couldn't quite make.
It's hard to find time. I mean, I think people don't maybe realize how much of a time demand a lot of these events are on us. And as we have best intentions of hanging out and getting some one-on-one time, it's not always possible, mate. I mean, it's just so much to fit into such a small amount of time, isn't it?
Well, yeah, you were at the BTC thing, weren't you? And I couldn't get down there. I can't remember what I was doing, but I think I had something on here. I can't remember what it was, whether it was Wahl or something else. I don't know. But then we were like, okay, well, I'm going to be like in Toronto for the show in April. We can do it then, great. But obviously, that's not happened, has it? So,
well, it's sad because I think people have, depending on what country you're from, you don't have like a proper sense of geography when you're in a place. You know, you think you're going to England. England feels quite small compared to Canada, so you think, well, I'm in London. It's not going to be that far, but it's actually quite far from where you live. And similarly, like people are always to me, hey, I'm going to be in Toronto. Why don't we hang out? And I'm like, it's a 5-hour flight away from where I live.
And you know what? It's actually not that bad for me to get to London. It probably takes me like, well, there's the train from Sheffield to London. It's like 2.5 hours. But
I've actually taken that train before. I took that train to come and visit you not long ago, and you showed me around Sheffield, which is beautiful, by the way.
Yeah, but getting from London to where you were in London probably could have taken me 3 hours, maybe more, and then obviously for you to leave the show and then get anyway. We know the story, don't we?
Well, I'm so excited to have you here now, mate. It's good to see your face. It's been some time. I know we've all been on lockdown for a little bit, which is, let's face it, really droning on in some ways. And each area is affected so differently. How are things in London or Sheffield anyway?
Well, Sheffield, London, we're all the same at the moment. It's UK wide. Nobody's going back any earlier than anybody else at the moment over here. So we are, I think, I mean, I'm totally lost track of like day, time. I think we're like 9 weeks now in. So I know we're told now that it's going to be 4th of July.
It's kind of like a new Independence Day almost, isn't it?
Yeah. It's Independence Day. So, but they said 4th of July at the earliest. So it doesn't look like there's any chance of us going back any earlier, but also there could be a chance that that may even be later as well. It depends what happens with this second wave. So they've let some of the businesses go back that are going into offices that can create sort of social distances. And then the next wave of that would be sort of the hairdressers and dentists and some obviously retail shops and outlets. And then the phase after that would then be restaurants, bars and cinemas and things like that. So that's kind of the final phase. So the restaurants and the bars are you know, they're really going to suffer if they're, you know, much longer than we are.
100% agree with that. I think one of the things I want to get into a little bit, I mean, you're really well known for your technical work, your classic work. And I think even your whole aesthetic, your shop, everything speaks to that. So I want to take it back to the beginning just a little bit, because I think that a person's history usually informs their present. You know what I mean? And so what is it about that work that connected with you? Because you got into this, like you're saying, about 30 years ago, did you say?
So 32 years ago this year, I started. So I went straight from school. I did the last couple of years while I was at school for like Saturday jobs for extra money, which then turned into summer holidays for extra money, and then turned into kind of, well, I'm leaving school now. What do I want to do? Whenever I was asked by a teacher, what do I want to do? I always just said, well, I want to do hairdressing because I really enjoyed it, you know, when I was doing that. So I went straight from school, trained as a hairdresser, but as soon as I'd finished my qualifications, I was always doing mostly kind of guys' hair, and most of my female clientele were always kind of like short haircuts anyway, because they were always the haircuts that I liked to do. And I hated all the perming and colouring and all that kind of stuff. As soon as I could get out and go and work and find a little barbershop to work in, I did. So I found some little Italian barbershop in Sheffield. And then that's when I really learned the difference between like hairdressing and the way you taught barbering, and barbering and the way you taught to cut men's hair from someone who's only trained as a barber. And the guys that were there, and although I'd probably by then, because I'd worked at a couple of different salons after finishing my apprenticeship then, so I'd probably been cutting 7 or 8 years by then anyway, and I thought I was, you know, pretty competent and pretty good. Those guys showed me a lot in terms of, like, you know, the finishing of a men's haircut, as you know, which is everything, you know.
Yeah. I think detail, that's one of the more unsung qualities in people's work, is their ability to do good finishing work.
Yeah, and I still hadn't found my niche then, if you like. I mean, I could see myself going towards, if I look back on it now, going towards those classic haircuts just because of the things that I liked. But it wasn't until sort of a few years later, after I moved from that barbershop to another one, and I think it first happened, I was actually then back in a salon, actually working for part of Regis, and but I was just doing men only in their salon.
I was doing hair for about 10 years as well, when I came to like a midlife crisis point, right? Where it was, I was working in salons. I was a hairstylist. I was very competent. I felt really good, but, and I owned a couple of salons, but I got to this point where suddenly I just wasn't in love with it anymore. And I had this like small crisis of like, is this what I want to do with my life? You know what I mean? And I decided to, at that point, reevaluate, and which is ultimately what led me to barbering. But did you ever hit a point like that in your career?
Yes. I was getting to a point where I was still barbering, but I was back in the hairdressing salon, Regis, and I was working, you know, 60, 70 hours a week, because it was open 7 days a week. I was working part-time for American Crew, just started doing little bits for Wahl then as well. This was about probably 12 years into my career in hairdressing. And so I was really young, and I was like getting paid and going, really, 60, 70 hours a week, and that was kind of like demoralizing me a little bit. Then I had a rock climbing accident, pulled my shoulder out of my socket, and so that sort of took me out of the game for a little bit. You know, therapy and all the things that you need to do, to cut all long story short, and then back in work, and I'm like, my arms up all the time. It was really like causing me like a lot of problems, so I ended up taking a completely different career path. There was a friend of mine who was working in mobile phones. He'd been working down in London, And he came back. He was coming back up to Sheffield for working for a company up near us that was owned by a Hong Kong consortium. And I knew he had like really good money. And I was in the car with him one day, and I wasn't planning to do any of this. I was just sort of thinking about other things, and he just sort of said, "I'm looking for a new trader," and I was like, "I'll do it." And he's like, "Really?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm really struggling with work. I can't do this anymore. I just need to find something else. You know what I mean? If it's temporary, it's temporary. If it's just like a new career path for me, then I just need to give it a go. I just feel like there's something else out there. I'm just being demoralized by working so many hours and not really getting anything." This hairdressing was really poorly paid by anyway.
I think notoriously too, the two worst paid professions in the UK are actors and hairstylists. Isn't that right? They're not a particularly high paid profession.
Well, I mean, if you're at the top of your acting game, I should imagine there's a lot of money in it. But I don't know. I couldn't say because I'm not an actor and I don't know any, so I don't really know what they get paid. But back then, hairdressing was really poorly paid. And then obviously I didn't really know what to charge for the outside training and stuff that I was doing with crew and with Wahl, so I wasn't probably charging anywhere near what I should have been charging. And so I then found myself sat behind a desk selling mobile phones, but this is when mobile phones were in their infancy, when the first little tiny phones came out. You remember?
Like the little one with the flip on it. It was like that thin.
The flip ones, yeah. And the Motorola V3688. I remember all the numbers. At the Nokia 8210, they were like the first sort of little ones. And so there was this massive boom, and he was working for a company that traded mobile phones. So they were buying them anywhere from 500 pieces to 5, 10, 20,000 pieces at a time.
Now, I have to ask because you are one of the best dressed people I have ever met. I mean, you've got, and I'm sure if nobody has ever seen you before in real life, like I encourage everyone to look at Joth's wardrobe on his Instagram, because he dresses like my grandfather if my grandfather was an English pimp. And it's absolutely astounding, the collection of cravats and hats and suits, like fine suits that you have. And I want to know, did you dress like that to sell mobile phones?
Well, no, because I was sat behind a desk with a landline and like a book, and someone just dumped a big book down on the desk and went, "Right, okay, they're the contacts, call them." Just cold contacts, just like groups. But then it was
the irony of selling mobile phones on a landline is not lost on me.
Yeah, but then it became kind of like, it was really tough at first because he gave me this thing and I was like, right, okay, cold calling people, that's new to me. And then he said, right, I need you to send these emails. And I was like, okay, so how do I send an email? And then I was like, I must have been like probably in my late 20s then, mid to late 20s. So computers have been out, but it's hairdressing like you and I for all that time. We never had any use of it. And so I never sent an email. I had no idea what to do. I was totally green. And, but then slowly it was just kind of building relationships, because those contacts that I called, then like you were behind the chair, you were making relationships with people, and that's what I was great at. So I picked it up really quickly. I made relationships with people really quickly. And so whenever I had something to sell, I knew I could call those people. And then within the first sort of couple of years, I'd say probably wasn't earning much more money. And I was starting to get to a point where I was like, my shoulder was all right. And I was thinking about going back. And then all of a sudden, my money just doubled. Like my annual salary doubled overnight. And then 12 months later, it doubled again. And then 12 months later, somebody headhunted me to go work for them in a different part of the country, and it doubled again. And I went from from when I started my career, earning £23.50 a week for a 45-hour week work, on the youth training program, to now earning 6 figures, going, oh my God, this is not real, like pinching myself going.
We call that the golden handcuffs when you have a job like that, when the money's too good to leave.
Yeah, and I was surrounded by people that were making huge amounts of money. I mean, millions of pounds in a week, And I wasn't earning anywhere near that sort of figure because I was working for those companies, but I was still towards the end of of that sort of 5-6 year span. I was earning an annual 6-figure income, and so because I'd come from this industry where I had to work all those hours for such little money, to work and graft those hours again and sometimes more, but to earn that kind of money was like, okay, right, all right. But I was just clever with it, and I didn't blow it all on flash cars and things like a lot of them did, and I just was, my friends were saying to me, God, you're never going to go hairdressing again. And I had some of my family, who I'll never forget, said to me, oh yeah, now you've got a proper job.
Wow. I think so many people have
That
been
really,
like, there's two big deterrents I've found from people going the distance in this industry. Number one is physical disability, right? I mean, there's so many people that are great at this that have been taken out by physical impairment, or I don't think people really appreciate what a physically demanding job barbering actually is. But the second one that holds people back is public opinion. Right? It's these people that are like, oh, well, what are you going to do for a real job? Or for some reason, it's been viewed as this like not legitimate profession for so long. And I don't understand why, because I love barbering and I've done well by it. It's given me everything. But what was it at that point when you were making all this money, when people were proud of you and being like, oh, you don't have to have that petty little person job anymore? What on earth brought you back?
Everything that they said. Because whenever they said to me, oh, you're never going to go back to hairdressing again, and that family member said to me, oh, now, yeah, you're never going to go back, now you've got a proper job, and it was always sort of very down on that kind of thing, on hairdressing, and always looked down on it as a career. Funnily enough, his daughter now is actually going into hairdressing, and he phoned me for advice. Right, so
that's karma. That's what karma looks like.
But it was those remarks that actually that because I was getting, although the money was great, the environment and the people I didn't really enjoy. There was a lot of very kind of wealthy, arrogant. I've got all this money, and I just knew that this was a bubble, and at some point it was going to burst. And so if you're all going to carry on, buying bottles of Dom Perignon and paying cash and, bunking it all everywhere, at some point soon, when this stops, you're going to have nothing, And so I could sort of see the writing on the wall, and I thought, I'm going to get out while the going's good, not when it's bad. And so I created a nest egg. And then all those things that people said along the way, like, you're never going to go back to it, and you're never going to go back to hairdressing again. And I always said, never say never. You never know. And I always had this sort of vision of what I wanted, but then now I had this other side of me that I never had before, which was an understanding of how business operate and thinking about things in terms of money. And I'll give you like a quick example, because I use this quite a lot when someone asks me this question or I talk about this story. The realization of like being in mobile phones for me and what that did for me in terms of making me think about business more was something really silly. I was on holiday with my wife and another couple, and me and this guy. We were going to go on the parasailing thing, on the boat with the parachute.
Yeah, where they tow you off the back and you.
Yeah. So we were sat on the sort of jetty on the side, waiting for this boat to come in. We were all the life vests on and everything. And sat there, and the boat's going out. It's coming back in. It's going out. It's coming back in. And I started counting all the heads on the boat. It's like, I don't know what it was, like 40 euros or something. I'm thinking, yeah, no. €40, €40. I started counting heads and counting money and thinking in terms of money and how that was kind of operating. And I was going, all right, shit. And then all of a sudden I went, why did I do that? Because previously I would have been going, oh, look at his haircut, look at his haircut, look at his haircut. I always looked at everybody's haircuts. And then because a lot of the business was about networking and speaking to people, making relationships. When I spoke to someone, it wasn't like I immediately looked at the hair. You immediately wanted to know what someone did for a living, and so and how they did, and what made them successful, and that was how that whole conversation evolved around. And so my conversations just changed dramatically from where they were all about revolving around hair to all about revolving around business. And so I basically took the money and I went, right, okay, I'm going to go back and I'm going to do the thing that I've always been really good at, or I felt I was really good at, and more importantly, I really enjoyed. And now I'm earning, 10 times less, but I'm 1,000 times happier.
It's funny how that can sometimes be related, isn't it? I think we all chase the dollar so much, but in reality, it just doesn't lend to any happiness. I mean, I've never, even though what I've been doing, and I mean, since you and I, we started at the same time when it comes to barbershops and this model of what we're doing. And I think that's one of the reasons why I've always had a fondness for you, is just because you were one of the first people that I discovered in the UK that I thought was really doing it right. And it was interesting because even though our scale has grown, I mean, you have a brand of your own. I've got a brand of my own. I've got multiple shops going, and the outward appearance of it has grown exponentially. But I've never felt like I'm making any more money than I ever does. I've always, when I started, paid myself little and grew much. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that was kind of the model for the shop. It wasn't like I got my one little shop and then suddenly I was just milking it for everything it was worth. I was actually paying myself probably much less than I was bringing into the shop. But I was watching that grow and watching it grow stronger and then adding to it slowly over time. When you got your first shop, which you took me to go see, this tiny little place in Sheffield, tell me about it.
So, well, I mean, so I didn't start with obviously the big shop that everybody sees now. Like you just said, it started with this little small shop. But even before that, it started even before that, because when I was looking around to do something, and I was thinking, well, start a shop from scratch. I haven't been hairdressing for 5 or 6 years. I've got no clientele. I don't know anyone in the industry really, other than a few sort of friends that are all probably got their own shops and everything anyway. So, thinking about it, what's the best way to do it? If I do it, I'm going to be tied to the shop all the time. There's, no holidays, all these sort of things, days off. I need to find maybe someone that I can do this with and find a partner. And the guy that was cutting my hair at the time, I approached him because he had I think a couple of shops at the time. He had one shop and he just started another one. Anyway, long story short, went into business with him. And it was, I'm not going to say it was the wrong move or it was the worst thing I did, because I learned a lot from that, from the negatives, but I also took a lot of positives from it as well. But I should have gone into business with somebody that I knew really well, because I didn't really know this guy, and he was 10 years younger than me. And then towards the end, there was just a lot of mistrust. I mean, we had about 4 or 5 shops between us towards the end, and we ended up selling one of them. We ended up splitting the partnership. I kept a couple of the shops, he kept one, and then we started a product range together, which is not the one that we have now. It's a different one, and I wasn't ready to do that. So you keep that.
Partnership is a really, really tough thing, isn't it? Partnership is incredibly hard.
You've got to be able to trust that person absolutely explicitly, because the minute doubt of trust came in, and this is what happened really from my part and also from his part as well, that's when things started to go down and down and down and down. And I was really negative towards him and that whole thing for a long time, which really ate me up for a long time, because it was 12 months of me total paranoia, going through everything with a fine-tooth comb, to try and find out, you know, what had gone wrong and if that had gone missing and that had gone missing, or if, you know, just totally getting paranoid about things. And, you know, now I can look back on it with a completely different view. And, you know, I learned some very valuable lessons there. And one of those is to make sure that, you know, if you're going to go into partnership with someone, you need to do something that you completely and wholeheartedly trust. So then that led me to then starting, you know, doing the thing by myself. So I took the 2 shops, changed the name, I completely changed the fit out, because he always wanted to do salon for men, so it looked like a salon but for men, and I always wanted to do this like old school barbershop, so I was always trying to do one thing and he was always trying to push for another, and that was another
Do you remember when that was like really uncool still? Like when people didn't get it, when I was like, I want to be a barber and I want to open a real traditional barbershop. And people thought that I'd gone mad, because I mean, it wasn't cool back then. We're talking back in like 2009, 2010, right?
Oh,
And
yeah.
I mean, like people hadn't caught on to that idea yet. That hadn't become a thing.
Him and all the guys that were working for him at the time used to rip the piss out of me, because I would bring my, you know, all my scissors out with the straight razors and everything, and I'd be straight razing the back of everybody's neck, and the road would be like, why are you doing that? He's this old school guy, you know, because I'm much older than everybody else. And it was always a bit of a running joke. And when I said, you know, I want to do this thing with not salon chairs, but with proper barber's chairs and everything, and his answer was always like, no, because people will just think like that all you do is short back and sides, and we'll miss all the students and they won't come in. And I said, yeah, but I want to be that short back and sides place. That's what I want to be known for. You know, that's what we do. We're barbers. We do short back and sides. Anyway, so we split. I took the 2 shops, changed the name to Savills.
How did you come up with the name? How did you name your shop, Savills?
The name, I wanted a name that didn't sound like a barber's or a hairdresser's. I wanted a name that sounded like I wanted the shop to look. And so I was thinking of the clothes that I like to wear. I was thinking of the era that I like to portray, and all that sort of 1920s classic architecture and the classic tailoring and clothes, which led me to Savile Row, which then led me to an abbreviation of Savills. For those people that don't know what Savile Row is, if you look up Savile Row, it's spelled differently to Savills. It's Savile, I think it is, Savile Row. It's a really famous street in London, which is now owned by the Queen, actually. She just bought it fairly recently. And it's where all the bespoke tailoring and suit making goes off in London. It's really famous.
Yeah, I've been down there actually. That was and even before that was exactly what I was drawn to, is this idea of fine tailoring. You know what I mean? And I thought it just fit so perfectly. And with the aesthetic that you were putting out, it was a home run, mate.
It just made sense, because I wanted to tailor the haircuts, sharp, neat, classic. You know, the classic haircut never dies. And, you know, when you look back at photos of Frank Sinatra, Cary Grant, Elvis Presley, James Dean, all those sort of people, you look back at those photos now, you know, those photos, those guys still look cool. Mm-hmm. If you look back at photos of me from the 1980s and 1990s, man.
Oh my God! I know. I have one where I look like Rufio from the movie Hook, basically.
I'm going to try and find these photos.
I'm dying to see this.
So that's where Savills was born. So Savills started in that little shop. It was a little 3-chair shop. It was me, no junior, because we had the other shop running. And that had been running for a while. So I had a few guys in that one. I think it was like a 5-chair shop. And I had like 3-4 guys maybe working in there, and girls. And then I started the other one by myself, and it was me, no other barber, no junior, and no heating in there. And I was sat there in winter at 7:30 in the morning, coming in early to try and get the early shaves before work. And I remember sat there with my coat on, kind of like freezing cold, and I had my laptop on the side. And I was just watching film after film after film, just waiting for people to come in. I never had a day where I didn't have anybody come in, but I did have a day where I had like maybe only one person came in or two people. And then gradually it just sort of built and momentum gathered. And I remember I had this old little black and white TV, like a really old, like retro, like 1960s, 70s black and white TV. And I managed to link it to a video player, and I had old, like really like cheesy movies like Commando playing on it in black and white. And Bruce Lee.
That's not, Commando would probably not be on my list of like movies I would assume that are playing in your barber shop.
I just was like, just for fun. And the cow was there then as well. We have that cow in that shop as well, which is obviously now, you know,
the mascot of Savills, really.
Which has become the mascot of Savills. And that's where, you know, then Savills was born. And then gradually we just got busy. And then we just got to a point where we literally just couldn't fit everybody in the shop. And I had, you know, 3 barbers managed to cram 3 chairs in there, and 3 barbers working in that tiny space, which really was small. And, you know, no kitchen area, no staff room, no anything like that. And, we grew it from there. And then obviously when we started doing those classic haircuts, and that then became very fashionable. Obviously, Scoren very famously were doing that in Rotterdam at the same time as well, which is how I got to know them and made a relationship through them. And then with my relationship through them, that obviously, you know, that helped us, I must admit, you know, in terms of because they were flying really high, you know, over there, and we were doing it here, and we sort of bolstered. And then the next thing you know,
yeah. I think there was I mean, we all of us at the same time, we did really well on the back of the tidal wave of this like hyper masculinization phase that came in. And there's a number of factors that rolled into that. But I think people like yourself and like Scoren, you know, and like us and a few other shops globally, like just all of a sudden just took off. Right. And it's so hard now to stand out in barbering in a sea of barbershops that there is now, because what we call the barber boom happened, right? And a lot of us were operating and doing these things before the real boom, the social media boom. But that just gave birth to everything. Do you think that if you were to start at doing this today, that Savills would be as known as it is?
I really, it's really difficult to say. I think a lot of it is kind of definitely right time, right place. And so there is, you know, we were doing the right thing at the right time. And, you know, I always wanted to do the classic haircuts, and I was doing them a lot by that point anyway with my clients, because those are the haircuts that I like to do. And then it just became sort of like trendy or fashionable. And so we were already ahead of it. And then obviously the social media thing happened as well. And that was all by accident as well, because that was kind of like I was like trying to find, you know, books and things, and the books were really rubbish. And so I was like, well, okay, we're doing these haircuts. Why don't we take photos of the haircuts? But I'm putting them on my phone, and the phone storage was really rubbish then. And then someone said to me, yeah, have you seen this like Instagram thing? And I was like, wow, what is it?
Yeah, do you remember that? Like when Instagram was so brand new and we were all taking pictures of our breakfast and shit, we didn't know.
So, but that became a lookbook for our clients. So I was like taking pictures of the haircuts, going, oh, like this is the haircut I did like earlier on today or yesterday, and this is what I'm talking about. And you go, oh yeah, great, perfect. And then from that, then obviously, you know, that sort of caught on, and other barbers were doing it, because we were one of the first ones doing it, along with, you know, with yourself and Scoren and stuff. You know, that grew very rapidly as well. So we created a global following very quickly. And then we were like, okay, we're so busy in the shops now that we've not got room in there. They were literally like queuing outside to get in. And I remember having to go and buy like 20 brollies, because when the weather was really bad, everybody stood outside in the rain because there was literally nowhere for them to sit inside. And that's when I started to look for another shop, and then eventually closed those both down to move like literally across the road into the shop that everybody sees now.
Do you think, Joth, do you think that Instagram, do you think that the by kind of accidentally falling into that, I think as a lot of us did you end up finding that was a massive benefit to your business? Was that driving traffic in the door, or did you think those two just existed side by side, separate from each other? Because like you were saying, you had like a global following, but did it translate locally?
Well, no. I mean, we'd had people travelling from Europe that were coming to see the shop and come and have haircuts and look and stuff like that. But what wasn't, it was a few. It was an odd one here and there. It wasn't really driving us. But what it was driving was obviously the social media presence, which we didn't know what it was to become and what it was to do for us. You know, we were just sort of taking it. And the same thing was happening on Facebook as well at the same time. And so, and even to this day, really, our customers don't really use our social media. Some of them do, but not all of them, really. If I've got something to say to my customers, I do it through our database by email. I don't really do it through social media. Mm-hmm. But then it got us to a point where people were just saying, "Oh, you know, that haircut you did, you know, do you do that from the front to the back, or do you start from the back to the front, or how did you do this?" People started asking loads of questions and then saying, "Oh, would you do a DVD? Would you do a YouTube thing?" And then I was like, "Okay, you know, maybe we should do like an academy or something, or maybe, you know, we should do like do like a 1-day thing or something. I don't know." And at that point, that's around the time that I was speaking to Rob, which is literally just before we moved across the road, and I went over to go and see Rob and Lane. And weirdly, we were having the same conversations about what was happening to us, and they were moving from the smaller shop across the road into the bigger shop, and we were looking for a shop at the time. We didn't know it was to be across the road, but we were looking for a shop to move into. But we were also thinking about doing something with teaching and all the rest of it, because we'd had so many people ask. But it wasn't until really 12 months later that we actually started that, because I just ignored it for 12 months thinking now. And then there were so many people asking, I thought, wow, okay, maybe this is another avenue, because now when we did move across the road, we've got 10 chairs, and I've got 10 barbers, but they all have the days off during the week. So the first portion of the week, Monday to Wednesday, I've got like at least 4 chairs empty. Why don't I just do something with those 4 chairs? And then that's when the academy started. And then little did I know, we put it on the website, and then literally within I think the first 3 months, we were booked up 12 months in advance, and people were traveling from Australia and New Zealand and Chile and Argentina, and I was like, "Oh my God, I'm coming home to my wife with this email coming through, and I'm going, there's a guy coming from New Zealand to the shave course. It's a 1-day course, and then he's going to do the 3-day course afterwards, but there's a couple of days in between. He's spending more time probably traveling than he is on the course." I couldn't believe it. Literally couldn't believe it. And that's when I realized like the power of social media and kind of what that was doing for us.
I think it's really weird when we travel. I mean, like the first time I met you, for instance, I mean, I find the social media impact hasn't been so much about what do you got there?
Can you see that? There you go. Look at that 1980s Joth.
That's brilliant. All right, well, I got to show you mine then. There we go. Yeah. There's 1980s Maddie. We have the same haircut, nice. Joth. We were rocking the same haircut, pal. I knew I liked you.
What about 19? Can you see that one?
Oh, it's sideways.
Yeah. This is 1990s Joth, long hair.
My God, that's Michael Bolton Joth, is what is. How am I supposed to live without you? I can see the veins bulging. Yeah, that's amazing.
I mean, that was. I mean, I'm crikey. I'm 50 next year. That was.
Oh, mate, I get it. Like, I don't feel. I feel like things are getting better, though. You know, I mean, I don't feel past my prime. I feel like I'm just in the middle of it. You know, how do you feel about it?
Well, we talked about this just before this started, didn't we? You know, just sort of asking each other how things are going, and actually now I'm probably in like the best shape I've ever been, but it's only really just during lockdown. I mean, for the last, I'd say probably maybe 4 years, 3-4 years, I think the onset of the stress of everything through work, with what happened at the beginning when we opened, with being so busy and all these things going on, and all these different leases going off and trying to shut them down, and then problems with the team and people leaving in really bad ways, and really learning really valuable lessons, and then not having time to deal with it, and then just going, right, okay, well, I've just got to move on now. I need to move on and keep throwing this thing to the back of your mind all the time. And then this stress build up, all of a sudden just then overflows and spews out in adrenaline somewhere. And I didn't realize what was happening to me. And then about a couple of years ago, around Christmas, I started getting like pain up and down my arm and up in my face and everything. And I spent the next 12 months, I must have had 5 different blood tests. I had 3 different ultrasounds. I had MRIs, CT scans, X-rays. Couldn't find anything. Nobody could find anything on my arm, up here, in my mouth, in my eye, jaw, everywhere. And I was just like, well, this has got to be something, right? It's just like, it was really debilitating, the pain. And it was traveling up and down my chest and everything. And it was actually, I think, a conversation with 2 people. One of them, Mark Payton, who was going through a very, a rough time. Mm-hmm. And another friend of mine in the UK who was also going through a similar thing to Mark with a breakup. And they were both talking about PTSD and stress and how that manifests itself in different ways. And I started to think, oh shit, yeah, maybe this is a stress thing, and maybe it's that's causing the problem. And I was having kind of all this stress and not realizing it was stress, because I didn't feel stressed at all. I was just sort of having a problem, and then dealing with it and moving on, and dealing with it and moving on, and not actually dealing with the issues. And that was always, been one of my things, like confrontation, and I never really liked doing that sort of thing. I always went to sort of go the long way around, which was, and then all these, this is where really, I think, where all this sort of illness was coming from. And then I kind of dismissed it again, I think, a little bit for a while, and then it really started to affect me, like emotionally. I was breaking down at silly things, and I was getting really snappy with the family and angry. And then, my wife pulled me to one side and was like, "You've really got to get a check on this now. This is not you. You're not yourself. This is not right. We can't continue like this, And that then drove me to then just sort of going to sort of, get some coaching and counselling and stuff like that, and see if there was sort of more to this. And then through that was like light bulb moments in, like, our conversations, where I would go, an example where she was asking me about things, and I would say, well, I'm a perfectionist. I always want to make sure that the haircut's right, and I'm never happy with the work that I've done. And when we've done photography and everything, I like some photography, some of it never sees the light of day. I mean, some of it I posted recently while we've been on lockdown, and I've had it for 3 years, but every time I look at it, I hate it, because I always think I could do it better. But I always thought that was a positive, because I was like, great, this is what's making me want to do better all the time, because I never think the haircut's perfect. And by the way, there is no such thing as a perfect haircut anyway, because, if it does exist, the head comes off, it goes on the spike on the wall, I lock the doors and I go home and I never come back. But I was always, I had this perfectionist thing, which I thought was a good thing, but actually it turns out it's a really bad thing. Because if you're constantly, trying to achieve perfection all the time, you're constantly beating yourself up, constantly over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. And it's really, really bad for you. So it was just little things like that were like light bulb moments. And then, not dealing with things head on. And I could go on for a lot longer about this, Matty, but, I was, for a long time, I was in a bad way and I didn't realize. And then, so probably the last, 6 to 8 months was when I started going through this and doing that before lockdown. And then I was saying to myself, right, I'm going to get fit this year. I'm going to lose all my weight. I put more and more weight on. I was going to the pub 5-6 nights a week, you know, because we moved into this little like village pub and everybody goes in early bar. It was a real social thing. And I was just like, okay, I got to stop. So February this year, I stopped drinking. I started running 5K, 10K, immediately started to feel better. Obviously, I continued with the coaching, which was a big help as well. And then, you know, I gradually just sort of, you know, started getting into exercise, really started eating really well. Immediately I was sleeping better, you know, because I was putting better food in, I was feeling better, I was exercising. I've gone from 14 stone to now just below 12 stone. And I'm like probably the lightest I've been since I was probably in my late 20s. And I'm like, I feel tip-top physically and mentally, like really strong.
Mate, you look great. I mean, I'm so happy to hear that, because I know you and I have had a lot of conversations when you're battling that and dealing with those things. And it's amazing how stress manifests in the body. And I'm not sure how much a stone technically is, but it seems like a lot if you're only 15 of them. So that's pretty impressive work.
Yeah.
I think one of the things I wanted to ask you about, like, I know a lot of us have fallen victim to that desire to create perfection. And inside our industry, a lot of things changed on the back of Instagram. And one of them is obviously going to be, you know, Photoshop and what people are doing to create the illusion of perfection. And do you think that that's lent to this unhealthy drive to create that perfect haircut?
Yes. Yeah, I do. So 1 stone is £14, by the way. So that really frustrated me. That whole kind of, because you know, I had that burst on social media with me in that jacket, which was me at my kind of, when I was going through it and not realizing it, and me lashing out at kind of everybody, which was kind of wrong of me. And and that was going to be my last post on social media. And then when I started all the sort of coaching again, and someone said to me, just do what you're going to do. People are going to forget about it anyway. And at some point, I'm probably going to post that again, but say it in a very different way. I'm just waiting for the right time. And that post is what you're talking about, which is what led me to that, which is all these photos that were going on Instagram, which were unrealistic haircuts, which were doing haircuts that were like art, which now I fully appreciate. And don't get me wrong, I appreciate it then, but for some reason I was very negative towards a lot of it. And I was like, well, you know, that looks great, but my customer comes in and wants that haircut. How is he going to recreate that haircut at home with this like super like wave quiff with this tiny little tizzy bit here and these tiny little bits that look brilliant when it's finished? But when the guy goes home and tries to do that himself, or even just tries to do a normal style on it, he's just going to have these bits like flapping around. It's like, come on, what's going on? You know,
or even just the what qualifies as a good fade has changed dramatically, hasn't it?
Yeah.
Or a good taper.
And then, like you said, you were looking at some of these fades, and I was like going, and I was doing the haircut myself going, how the hell does he make that look so clean? And then I started looking at it closer, and I was like, all right, I can see, right, okay, that's not actually his hairline. There's something there, whether that's edited, and then obviously started people using powders. And so people were like doing these fades and then powdering off all the edges, but not actually, and if they'd have put that in the post and said, but this is what I've done to finish it, and this is why it looks, I would have been like, okay, yeah. But what they were doing is portraying something that was so unrealistic, because I had all the barbers that were coming to me and people on the courses and customers coming in going, I want this haircut. And I'm going, that's not real, my friend. And he'd go, what? But how? And then I have to explain it to him, and then he would go, oh, and this is what it was creating, not only problems for the barbers to explain that, but if the barber didn't realize, the barber was then trying to recreate that, and then the customer's going, what have you done? You know, that doesn't look sharp. And so that was really frustrating me, which is when I kind of put that thing on there, just going, this is just like unrealistic photoshopped haircuts and all these barbershops opening up anywhere with no time served and all this kind of stuff. But actually, you know, now and what's going on right now, I think is going to kind of sort the wheat from the chaff, if you know.
Agreed.
What that means.
I think
Yeah.
there was a while where like a few of us that were, I don't know why, but a few of us that were looked at as kind of seniors in this, you know, I mean, like the guys that everybody was looking up to, so to speak, even though I've never felt like I should be one of those people. But it was one of those things where I think a lot of us started feeling a sense of responsibility for the craft. Do you know what I mean? Where it's like we would make these posts or say these things with the intentions of trying to preserve the integrity of the craft, even though it's really not ours to keep, is it?
Well, look, Rob said it beautifully. Real haircuts on real people.
Yeah.
It's simple. It's as simple as that. You know, it's a you know, the second oldest profession in the world, and it's been around for a long time, and it's all about servicing our clients. And if the client comes in and you're doing this super fancy haircut with little bits on it and all the rest of it, and then he goes home and then tries to recreate that, how can he possibly recreate that? It's not. It's not. It's an unrealistic thing, and that's what was frustrating me. Now, obviously, I look at it in a very different way, and I go, well, look, I fully appreciate. Not only do I still fully appreciate the haircut and the artistry.
Artistry.
Thank you.
Gotcha. I got your back.
Matty's back in. Of the haircut, but then I also appreciate why that's done in terms of like, you know, this is, you know, what can be done with hair and all the rest of it. And having spoken to some of those people that were doing those haircuts and voicing my opinion, not in a negative way, but just in a, hey, what happens when that guy goes back and he goes, oh, well, you know, I don't leave those bits there, you know, I fade them out afterwards or something. It's just for the haircut, just for the, you know.
Just for the photo, yeah.
But
you and I are known for our classic stuff too, though. I mean, so we are naturally drawn towards the idea of like the classics are king for us, you know, and for my own aesthetic, it's same. It's what I appreciate the most. It's what I've always done. It's certainly what I'm known for. I've been watching Rob a lot lately. Of course, he's one of our dear friends. You know, I mean, I think people think that because we all have brands and things that maybe we don't really love each other very much, but we really do. I mean, Rob is, I think, one of the best in the industry. I think he's one of the greats. And I love him as a human. He's an incredible guy. And we talk, you know, not as often as we should, but we talk from time to time. And I've noticed that his work lately is really being driven into a different place. He's really pushing the envelope into some different stuff and exploring his creativity and adding more of his hairdresser background to what he's doing. Yeah. And I really love it. And I know that's kind of being met with mixed reviews from people because, of course, people love to put you in a little box, you know, I mean, for what they think you should do. And I love how he's just breaks out of that. Do you feel a pressure now that that trend of the short back and sides and that classic, the wide acceptance of it and its like popularity is waning and turning into other things? Do you feel like a pressure to evolve your work and change it? Or do you still just love doing the classics and want to stick there?
No, I mean, I still love doing the classics, and the customers will always come in wanting the classics because they are the classics. Look, 32 years of hairdressing, I've seen it long, I've seen it short, I've seen it blonde, I've seen it blue-black, I've seen it permed, I've seen it do all these things, but all the way through that has been classic haircuts. And then these other trends have gone up and down through the middle of it. And so, even at the height of Savills and the classic haircuts and all the rest of it, we were still doing, you know, standard two back and sides, choppy on top, or someone wanted something a little bit more modern, we'd do it. Someone came in with long hair, we would do long hair because, you know, that's what we, when someone requests that, that's what we do. The only thing I obviously famously didn't want to do was the top knot haircut because I just thought that was just pointless.
I'm with you. I've never thought they look good. I've never been a fan.
It didn't look good, and I didn't want that to be the work that I portrayed.
It's
you
very
know,
tough to say that you're never going to do things though, because I remember quite famously saying that, like, I don't ever think mullets will be a thing, and I certainly don't want to do them if they are. But now they've come back again, and I'm like, I'm kind of into it. Like, you got to be careful on a long enough timeline. Your chances of you standing by that are slim.
we're all starting to see those come back now, but we were doing loads of those, like, you know, not that long ago when we were in the shop across the street. Everyone was having these faux hawk things, which is essentially like, yeah, a mullet, really, wasn't it? Really. You know, we do a lot of other classic haircuts, like in the UK, which you probably don't get in the States, which is like the mod crop, which is like Paul Weller and Oasis and all those.
Oh yeah, they never
of,
really took root here as much. You know, the super popular in England especially, and Europe, the rest of Europe really, but they never really took root here. There was a bunch of hardcore barber kids that were trying to force it to happen, and I don't know if it ever really hit the mainstream.
Well, I tell you, the thing with the mod crop is it's a very particular haircut, and it doesn't suit everybody, and also you have to have the right type of hairline for it and everything. But the mod haircut really is for only anyone that's in that culture.
Yeah.
So, you know, that listens to that type of music. Whereas, you know, what essentially are rockabilly haircuts, like the pompadour and all those kind of things, you know, just sort of bled into mainstream and became a bit trendy because they actually look quite, you know, well, they look cool and they look great. It didn't have this like blunt fringe with like feathery sides here and a kind of feathery bottom to it.
I think, is there any haircuts that you just want to see die at this point that you just don't want to see anymore?
Well, other than, you know, the top knot, really, I don't mind.
Still the top knot, and it's just really, it's just in your craw. You know, the funny thing is, I've found that in what I've really appreciated about barbering, I think that one of the things that was hard to accept with when everyone was trying to do the same haircut and win at the same blurry fade competition and all those things, I was starting to feel like things had been really hedged in, and that barbering wasn't going to have that longevity in this form again. And I was worried for a small time that this was just going to be a blip of a trend in barbering that was going to then disappear again. But I've been really encouraged. I mean, I got into education and teaching because of a desire to see the industry thrive long term, and trying to broaden the perspectives of what people could do behind a chair and what most barbers weren't particularly trained to do early on, especially through this period where the training for barbering seemed to focus entirely around clipper work. And my goal was always to expand the opportunities for barbers to create outside of that and to adopt different techniques, and maybe pulling back from some of our hairdressing background and whatnot to give them a broader tool set. And I've been really encouraged to see how much broader the strokes are now in the barbershop. It's not just seeing the same haircut over and over. We're starting to see a much broader variety of things being offered inside our industry. And I feel like from an educator standpoint, like that's really rewarding to see. And I know you spend an enormous amount of time educating. I mean, you are the principal educator for Wahl. You know, you've got your own school and your own courses and things. Have you, like, what got you into the teaching part of it? And have you found that that's been beneficial to you?
Do you know what? I really enjoyed teaching. In fact, I enjoy teaching more than I actually do cutting hair. And so that was kind of why I started teaching, really.
What's your goal for teaching now? Because I think things are going to start looking different. I mean, right now, obviously, we're quarantined, you know. I think events and things like that are going to come on quite a lot later. I don't think those are going to be open for a little while. I think even teaching in-person classes is very difficult to do for the next little while. But do you have goals as an educator moving forward? Do you want to maintain your role as an educator, or are you taking this as an opportunity to maybe look into different avenues?
No, I mean, obviously, it remains to be seen what's going to happen in terms of, you know, logistics with, you know, teaching and everything. Like you said, I don't know where that's going to go. I think it's going to be at least 12 months away before anything even like that is going to be happening. I know in the UK they're even still talking about Salon International actually happening, but in a very different way. I'm not quite sure how they're going to manage that, but I'll be interested to see if they can when that's in October. So I've got no plans to move away from teaching, really. You know, I still love doing it. What I get out of teaching and what I want out of teaching, really, I suppose, really, quite simply, like, I say the same thing to the students that come to the academy at Savills. On the first day, sit them all down, you know, do you speak about where everything is and what we're going to do over the few days. And my goal simply is to make sure everybody gets something out of the days, the 2 days, 3 days, or whatever the course is that they're here for. And that's what I want to focus on more than anything. So I don't actually do specific courses like I used to do, like this is the short hair one, this is the fade one, this is the long hair one. I go, right, this is like pretty much a totally bespoke course. All the models are live. If there is something in particular that you want to do and we don't have it, then I can pull a mannequin head out and show you how it's done. And we can walk through that. I want to know, like, individually what you want to get out of it. So if someone wants to get fading out of it, and someone wants to get a classic haircut, and someone wants to get a beard trim, then that's what I'll focus on to make sure that that person can. It could be something really simple, but if they just come away with one thing, which is what you know they want, because most, you know, you and I teach the same things, you know, score, and we teach the same things, but we all maybe do it in a slightly different way. But there might be that one thing that you do that I watch you sometimes, or I watch Rob do, or I watch Mark do, or whatever, or Mary, or anyone, and I go, shit, that's genius. It just could be really simple, and you go, all right, and that's the thing that I learned, and then that's why when the students come to me, it's just to pick that thing that goes, man, that's just changed my haircuts.
I've learned more from teaching and being around other teachers than I ever learned doing anything else. And in any school or sitting in any course, like just being around teachers and teaching myself has taught me so much about how I cut hair. Like having to break down processes and having to break down things that become second nature and so natural that you almost forget that you have to break that down step by step for people to kind of get them there a little bit. It's taught me everything about cutting hair.
Yeah. And when I train the trainers as well, so sometimes because I'm traveling quite a lot, I need to train somebody up within the shop to teach. And I'm like, I can't teach. I said, but look at the haircuts you're doing. They're brilliant. Yeah, but I don't know how to teach. Yeah, but you just need to break it down in your head. You just need to, like, you know, shadow me for a day, and then you listen to the things that I say and how you say it. You know exactly what to do. You just don't know the right terminology and how to word it until you do. But if I just throw you in the deep end and said, right, teach someone how to do that haircut, you'll do it, you know. But yeah, you know, that, what you just touched on there is, for me, the best thing about traveling and meeting everybody. It's not like getting up on the stage and doing all these things in front of all these people. And, you know, sometimes it's 20 people, sometimes it's 10. Sometimes it's 1,000 or 2,000 or 3,000, whatever your audience is. Mm-hmm. Yes, there's a buzz from those things and it's all great. But afterwards, when it's all done and we're all back at the hotel and then we're all meeting up to go for a drink and we're just a bunch of hair nerds going, hey, you know, that thing that you did, and how, what are you doing with your shop at the moment? What's this? And I'm having this is problem, and I've had this person do this and that person's left, but this person's doing really well and he's doing that and he's doing great. And every shop in every country, in every part of the world has the same problems, and you kind of just go, it's not just me.
Isn't it weird? You feel less alone. It's 100% of the reason why I started doing this podcast was because of those conversations. Because you're right. Like when we get off these shows, it's not the stage and it's not all the other stuff. It's the camaraderie. It's the vibe that we have together. The fact that we are not alone in this. And no matter how weird you are about hair or how unique you are inside of this industry, you feel like you don't connect with people. You're not the same as the people you work with. There are people like you out there. You know what I mean? And there is a solace in not being singular. There's a solace in not being alone in the way that you think or alone in the way that you do things. You feel less crazy.
Well, yeah. I mean, there you go. Look, yeah.
There it was. It happened. We've been waiting for that.
So this is the other cat. You missed the one, the big ginger one last time. This is Charlotte. So and she's going to just keep walking backwards and forwards now. Come on, say hello, Charlotte, and then off you go. Come on. So yeah, I mean that's great. You know, Mark Payton, good friend of both of ours, community barber and all that kind of thing. You know, the showcase and everything. That's kind of what it's all about. You know, barbers getting together to kind of feed off each other and learn off each other and inspire each other. You know.
Yeah, and I mean, I want to take an opportunity to just say thanks because. You have always been an inspiration for me. You've always been somebody that I look at as running alongside, you know what I mean? And as somebody that is been a good friend. You know, you and I, the first time we met, you didn't feel like anything less than a brother the first time we spent time, which was actually when we were at Scorum. I mean, I know we had met for like 2 seconds in Chicago, which was so awkward and weird. Because I was like, oh my God, it's Joth Davies. I have to say hi, and I'm gonna freak out. And then you looked at me, you're like, oh shit, it's Matt. And we were like, hi mate, you good? Yeah, you good? Okay, I gotta go. Okay, that was it. And then when we finally got to hang out in Rotterdam together and be part of Project X for Scorm, which was life changing for the people that were involved, it was absolutely mental. You and I just became family and have been such ever since.
Well, everybody did there. I mean, Rob and Lane surround themselves with the right kind of people. You know, they don't suffer fools. And so you just knew when you got that invite, the other people that were going to be invited, there were going to be no knobheads there, no egos, no, just everyone was just going to be there to talk about hair and to be around each other and have a great time. And it just was like, I mean, obviously being part of that project and the video and everything else was great. But again, afterwards, you know, when we went out bowling and we went out for the meals in the evening, you know, and you actually got to spend time with people from all these different countries, and you know, they were there from Japan and Brazil, and obviously yourself from Canada and the US, and it was just great. It was it was
lifelong friendships made. Look, mate, we are out of time. This has been such a good conversation. I appreciate you making the time, but I do want to give you a second to plug your brand because I love what you've done with it, and I want you to tell everybody about it.
Thank you. Well, look, Matty, thank you for inviting me onto your podcast. I know we've been trying to do this for a while, but I know we could probably talk for another 2 or 3 or 4 hours and bore the pants off people, but we would never get bored. So, you know, thank you. And likewise, you know, you're a massive inspiration to me as well, Matty, and how you portray yourself through social media and how you are with people and also, you know, how you've worked your brand and how hard you work. You know, I think, you know, you're a credit to the industry, mate. You really are. Yeah, well, look, my brand is Savills Barbers. We use Savills Academy. Everything is online. Savills Barbers at savillsbarbers.com. If you just go on to shop, all the academy information is on there for the courses. Obviously, we're not sure what's going to happen at the moment with the pandemic and everything, so we'll have to see how that goes. And then my brand is Copacetic, which obviously in the States, and I think for most places in Canada, people understand what that means, but in the UK, nobody has any idea, and everybody pronounces it wrong. But Copacetic is the brand.
Yeah, if you haven't checked out the Copacetic products, I mean, Joth doesn't do anything halfway. Every element and everything that's been thought through it's a brilliant line. You guys should really check it out. He's an incredible guy. His shops are just par excellence. They're some of the best in the world and widely regarded as one of the top barbers in the world. So thank you, my friend. Thank you, Joth Davies, for joining us today. For all of you that have been listening, I appreciate you guys. We only have 2 episodes left in this season. They're always great conversations. They're with people that I hugely, really, really admire and respect and love. And I also really, really admire and respect and love all of you guys for watching. It's been such a joy to bring these conversations to you. Thank you for all the positive support that you've been giving us. You can support things like this by supporting brands like Copacetic, like Joth's, and like Victory Barber, and brand like mine. These small companies that are just trying to do right by the industry. We appreciate all the love that you've given us over the years, and we really, really want to keep working with you and make this industry great together. All right, so thanks very much for tuning in this week, everybody, and we'll see you next time.